Good evening, everyone. It is so great to see you guys. You are in for a treat. Listen, tonight, unbelievable. We are very fortunate to have Mrs. Jacobson with us. Okay, let's see. Okay, we are almost ready to start. We're getting live on Facebook as well. We have another audience waiting for us on Facebook, so we are going to get that started. We are going to start in just about one more minute till we get rolling. Okay, we are just about ready to go live. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is wonderful to see you all on this fine evening, this lovely evening in Atlanta or wherever you are watching us from. It's good to see you all for this very special fireside chat with Mrs. Shaindy Jacobson. So the way we call this a fireside chat, and it's the intention is to be a little bit more of a Hamish environment, a warm environment. So I want to first talk about my connection with Mrs. Jacobson, which goes back a few years. How many years has it been? I don't even know. Okay, it's been a few years since I would write for Mrs. Jacobson's husband, Rabbi Simon Jacobson, who many of you met a few months ago when he was here headlining our event at Callan Wall, our annual dinner. And I had the opportunity then to meet Mrs. Jacobson. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think you might have been working on your house then, but I was over by, who was it? By your...
First it was my parents, then it was my sister.
For Shabbat dinner. I was a single guy in New York, not from Crown Heights. But the Jacobsons were very kind to invite me over and to host me for Friday night dinner. So we had the opportunity to meet and to have some interactions. And recently, we've had the opportunity to work together. Well, mainly my wife Leah and Mrs. Jacobson. Mrs. Jacobson runs, in addition to all of the other many other things that she's involved with and has done. She also now is the director of the Rosh Chodesh Society Institute for Women's Studies, which is international. Mrs. Jacobson, how many chapters of RCS are there currently around the world?
220.
Incredible. 220. So, and of course, we have a proud chapter right here in Atlanta. And I see some people that are with us here tonight are involved in RCS, Rosh Chodesh Society. It's incredible. How many people are participating on an annual basis, roughly, around the world?
About maybe 8,000.
Amazing. Kanai, it's unbelievable. It's amazing. Mrs. Jacobson is an acclaimed educator. She's a musician and a composer. And as I mentioned, she heads up the Rosh Chodesh Society initiative, this institute for Jewish women's studies. It's truly a blessing to have her with us here tonight. The topic of Mrs. Jacobson's talk is everything I know about happiness, I learned from sadness. So without further ado, I'd like to turn over the floor to Mrs. Jacobson to please present on the topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that very, very beautiful introduction. I remember some very wonderful days with you. As a young man, you still are a young man, and I know that you do very, very great things, as does your wife, Rebbetzin Leah. So I am very, very fortunate to be part of your community right now. That's the beauty of Zoom. So thank you everyone for joining us. And I am inviting you all to come along with me on a little journey. The journey I want to invite you to is a journey that began in my personal life. It began 50 years ago when I was a little 7-year-old second grader living a very, very wonderful, blissful, very, very happy life. Really, I couldn't think of anything better than living the life that I lived. I grew up here in Crown Heights in Brooklyn, and I was very, very fortunate and very, very blessed to have a very loving, warm, wonderful family, and to live in this neighborhood and to be in the limelight and under the educational vibe of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So life was really very, very wonderful. And the journey I want to take you on is one where, as I said, as I put on the title, that everything I learned about happiness, I learned from sadness, because that is really the truth. Because early on, as a 7-year-old, I suffered, along with my family, a very, very terrible tragedy. But this tragedy, which nobody would wish on anybody, once it came our way, we grew up trying to understand and to see and to plow our way through the sadness to see that we can have a tremendous amount of happiness, not only to see the happiness, but to experience it and to live within the happiness all of the time. So I think one of the good ways to begin this is to share something that I'm sure many of you are aware of, a famous expression that Ernest Hemingway said in A Farewell to Arms. He writes there that the world breaks everyone, and afterward, many are stronger at the broken places. Now, of course, we all wish that the world would not break us, but living in a world which is full of things that we cannot control, all we have to do is look at us right now. Whoever thought we'd be, in 2020, we would be suffering a pandemic, a terrible COVID pandemic? Whoever thought we would be suffering such terrible racial tensions and all kinds of things? This is on top of all of the things that we personally each have in our lives. So some of these things we cannot control, but what we can control, and we all learn this in our lives, if we are able to see the light, even just a tiny bit, is that we can control the way we deal with the circumstances that are given to us in our lives. And we know that while life may break us, it's what we do with the pieces that matters most. And that's really what I want to speak about this evening. So going back to what I said, that we lived a very wonderful, blissful, glorious life. My mother, who was 37 years old, my dad was just 40 years old. They had 5 young children between them. I was the youngest. I was 7 years old. My sister was the oldest. She was 16. So between 7 and 16, there were 5 of us. Very happy well-adjusted children who we just, went with the flow. And my mother, who was a very beautiful, vibrant, creative, very involved woman, started to feel very, very tired. And being that she was always very healthy, she couldn't even imagine that she was not well. And as time wore on, she started having other symptoms until she finally decided that maybe she needs a doctor, not imagining what she would be hearing when she saw one. So she took herself to the doctor, thinking this was just a routine visit. And the doctor looked at her, and he knew immediately that something terrible was wrong with her. And he did some tests, and he broke the news to her and my father that she was suffering from a terribly far gone stage of leukemia. And this was 50 years ago, and they tried whatever they were able to offer her. But needless to say, today we still need lots of help from God. God forbid when someone is diagnosed. But then medicine and science, their offerings were quite limited. And so just 6 weeks after she was diagnosed with leukemia, she passed away. And she passed away on the second day of the holiday of Sukkot. This is in the month of Tishrei, after the high holidays. It's always a very, very joyous holiday after the solemnity of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And here we were, a young family who just suffered a terrible tragedy. Now, no one should ever know of such things, but as we know that when there is a holiday such as Sukkot or Pesach, Passover, one has to finish the complete holiday in order to begin to sit Shiva. So of course, she passed away on the second day of Sukkot. The day after that, which was the first of the intermediary days, which we call Chol HaMoed, we had the funeral, but we did not sit down to sit Shiva until after Simchat Torah, because that is the way in the Jewish way in the laws of mourning. Now, there was no social media then, and we didn't have internet, and we didn't have WhatsApp or anything of that sort. But this was such a horrific tragedy at that time. Nothing like this had happened. Word spread very quickly, and the community and people were just unbelievably kind and helpful and supportive in many, many ways. And my siblings and I never did, and we never will forget the unbelievable goodness and kindness and support that people gave us. Now, what I want to tell you is that at that time, we grew up in Crown Heights. This was 1969. And 1969, if any of you know the history of Brooklyn and of these little communities, many of the communities were slowly becoming decimated. People who had money started to sell their homes and run away because an undesirable element was moving in next to them. So basically, within a very, very short time, the only people left in the little Jewish communities all over Brooklyn were people who didn't have money to move, or the elderly or the infirm. And at that time, the Lubavitcher Rebbe made a request, and he said, our shul will survive no matter what, because nobody here is going anywhere. But I'm asking you, my students, please, if you're able-bodied, walk to the communities that surround us and go pray, go daven there on Shabbat and on holidays. And this way, you'll keep up the shuls for those people who are not able to keep them up themselves. So of course, like everybody else, my dad then decided that he was going to go to a shul every Shabbos and every holiday. And he, with a group of his friends, they decided they were walking then every week to a shul in East Flatbush, Brooklyn. When I was a child, I thought that walk from Crown Heights was miles and miles and hours away. However, of course, it was only about a 15-20-minute walk, and it was quite nearby. And for special occasions, my dad would take his children along with him. Of course, in retrospect, I realized he did this because this was an educational process. He was teaching us that when you have something or you're able, you share it, you go out of your way to help other people as well. Needless to say, it would have been much simpler for him and his friends to go without their children. They could walk faster, they could get there sooner and get back sooner. So here we are, 1969, the holiday of Sukkot. It's Shmini Atzeret in the evening, and my dad says, this year will be no different than any other year because this is a holiday where one must be happy. And so everybody, we're going to put on our nicest new clothes that we bought for the holiday, and we're going to bring joy and celebration to Jews. And I still remember how my grandmother made sure, my mother's mother, that we were all dressed perfectly. I still remember she put a bow in my hair to match my clothes, and our shoes were shiny and we looked perfect. And they said to us, you are going to be like everybody else. This is a happy occasion. You're not allowed to mourn now. And we went, we were very excited, and my father took us with him. We walked to East Flatbush. We got there, and as children go, thank God that children have a different wavelength than adults. And they don't comprehend what a tragedy is in the way that an adult does. So I was very happy. I came to shul. We came into this little shul, and there were people there, and they gave us little bags of goodies, and they gave us flags, and the festivities began, and they started to sing and dance and go around the bima with the Torahs to perform the hakafot, the circles around the bima. And of course, in honor of the Hasidim who had walked to the shul, they honored them to dance with the Torahs for one of the hakafot. And my dad was given one of the Torahs, and he was dancing with everybody else. And unbeknown to us at that time, there was a young 14-year-old boy who tapped his father on the shoulder. They lived in that community. And he said to his father, Dad, do you see that little man dancing in the middle of the circle with that Torah? I never saw someone dance with so much joy and so much happiness. Dad, he must be the happiest man in the world. Why is he so happy? Is he very rich? Is he just a very happy person? And his father took him aside and told him quietly in his ear, he said to him, son, I want to tell you something. This man, you should know that a few short days ago, he lost his wife, who was 37 years old. And now he's a widower with 5 children. And the son said, that's not possible. How could somebody be dancing like that under such circumstances? And his father said to him, I don't know, but I know one thing. He's a Jew, and he's a chassid, and he's a Lubavitcher chassid. So he does what he has to do, even if it's difficult. And he just does it because that's what a Jew is supposed to do. So I hope you learn from this that sometimes when you don't want to do something, you do it, even if it's difficult. Okay, we did not know this exchange took place. The dancing finished. We were all excited. My father walked us back home. We came back to Crown Heights, and the festivities in Crown Heights, of course, continued. The holiday was over after 2 more days, and we had Shiva. And again, as a 7-year-old, of course, to me, the tragedy was a tragedy, but it was not the kind of tragedy that it was, obviously, to my father and to my grandmother and to the adults who really understood it. Yes, there was terrible sadness even in the heart of a 7-year-old. I knew my mother was not there. I knew I would never see her, although this is a very, something I learned about denial that even a child can do. In my mind, I would envision that maybe I'll go somewhere one day and she'll just appear. And I think these were all mechanisms that gave us the ability to cope. But one thing we did know, my father pulled us all together and he said to us, listen, we are going to have a happy family. We are never going to be able to bring mommy back, but she wants you to be happy. She always wanted you to be happy. She and I had a dream after we bought this house that as soon as we pulled together a few extra dollars, we were going to buy a piano and give you piano lessons. Even though she's not here, I'm going to buy a piano and that's what's going to be. And after the shloshim, the customary 30-day mourning period, he went with his friend, the only person at that time in Crown Heights, I think that was a Chabad Chassid who had knowledge of music, his good friend, Rabbi Eli Lipsker. You can imagine the scene of these 2 rabbis going piano shopping. Too bad they didn't have iPhones to video the scene. And a few days later, he told us in the morning before we went to school, when you come home today, there's going to be a big surprise waiting here for you. We came home and we were out of our minds with excitement because there in the middle of the living room, there was a piano. He hired a teacher, and for years and years and years, we studied music. It was one of the greatest loves of my life. And he would say, this is going to be a house of joy and of music. And we sang and we danced and we laughed. And we really had a very, very happy life. And God really helped us, and so did our relatives, and so did our friends and our community. And we were able to grow up in a very, very happy home. Thank God, we grew up, we got married, we built our own families. And I want to tell you that 20 years after this story, after that year, that means now the story is 30 years ago, and not 50 years ago, in Crown Heights, everybody was preparing for the holiday of Sukkot once again. I was already a married woman with 2 little babies. And what happened was something very, very extraordinary. In Crown Heights, there is an organization. The headquarters is in Crown Heights, but it's an organization that spans the entire globe. It's the largest Jewish children's organization in the world. It's called Tzivos Hashem. Whoever has been to Crown Heights knows that there is a tremendous, across the street from the Rebbe's shul, there is a building. It's called the Jewish Children's Museum. That is a branch of this organization. And this organization is dedicated to bringing joy, happiness, and Judaism to Jews, Jewish children all over the world, regardless of their background. And one of the things they do is they create Jewish programs. They create programs for Jewish children. And one day, this 20 years after the story happened, there was a young man who was answering the phones in this organization. He answered the phone and received a phone call from a person who said, "Hi, my name is so-and-so. I live in this and this town on Long Island. And this year, I would very much like to create a program for Jewish children in my community. However, I've never done anything like this before, and I don't have anyone to help me. So I was told that you are an organization that may be able to help me." And this young man said, "Sure, tell me what you need, tell me what you want to do, and we'll help you all the way." And he said, "I just bought a house here. I am married a short while. I'm very successful. I decided to move to this town. It's a very Jewish town with a lot of young families, but very little Jewish organized education. And I want to make a program for the Jewish children this year in my community for Simchas Torah. I want to bring them the joy of dancing with the Torah." And he said, ask them some statistics, some logistics. How many children do you want to have? What do you want to do exactly? And he gave them all the information, and he said, "Okay, I'm going to help you create the program. I'm going to send you some young boys to help you run the program, and I'll call you back in a few days and help, tell you all of the details." And before he hung up, he said, "I'm just curious to ask you, sir, are you a youth director, or do you have a Hebrew school, or why are you planning to do this program?" And he said, "Well, I'll tell you, I'm not a youth director. I really have no experience with Jewish children or with any children's programming. But 20 years ago, when I was 14 years old, I was at a synagogue in Brooklyn, and something happened. And I made myself a promise then that I was going to do something when I had the means. And now I finally am able." And he said, "Do you mind telling me what happened?" And he told him that he was a young kid, and this rabbi came to dance with other Hasidim, and his father told him what happened to this rabbi. And he couldn't believe it. It made such an impression on him that he decided right then and there. He said he had a diary and he wrote it down, and he never ever forgot. He wrote, "When I can do this for other children, I will do this." And he said, "The time has come." And he said, "By the way, do you know the name of the rabbi that was dancing?" He said, "Yes, because my dad told it to me and I wrote it down. His name was Mr. Hirsch Gansberg." This young man became so excited. He said, I know him. Can I call him and tell him? And he said, absolutely. So that year, before Simchas Torah, my dad called each of his 5 children and told us this story. And he said, this is something that we cannot just let it fall by the wayside. If we had a terrible tragedy, and look what this spurred on, that somebody was so affected by the fact that we were able to be happy, even under such circumstances, let's do something about it. So after the holiday, we got in touch with this young man's family, and we had a few weeks later, we had a beautiful evening where we all got together. We've done this a number of times. We've shared very wonderful festive family occasions with each other, and weddings and bar mitzvahs and all kinds of things. And this man made it his mission to continue to bring joy to other people. This story has really traveled across the globe. We have heard feedback how other people have really seen it and paid it forward, and how it has really, really created a movement of joy and happiness. Because when we think about what this little bit of sadness was able to accomplish, this sadness, in a certain sense, what it was really the birth of hope that I think probably under normal circumstances would be very, very difficult to dig deep and to find where is that hope hidden between, within us. But we know it is hidden within us. Why? Because each of us has something that we all have that unites every single one of us, and that is our soul, our neshama. It is a piece of God himself within us. And that is the actual reservoir of resource that we have that really allows us to dig as deep as we can, because it is really limitless. God is limitless, and if he gives us a piece of himself, and I have that within me, that means I am able, if I use that, it may be very difficult, but if I find within myself the resources to do that, I can then be able to find a way to deal with whatever God gives me. Now, please do not get me wrong. It is, of course, our wish and our prayer and our hope that we are not given curveballs like this, that we are not hit with tragedies. Life should be full of joy without any tragedies, and we'll take that over any tragedy any day. But again, like I said earlier, God does not ask us. We are each given what God decides we are able to handle. And so I want to just share with you for a moment. We know that Rabbi Nachum Mendel of Kotsk said a line. I don't think I ever understood it until I grew up and understood really what I had lived through. He says, there is nothing as whole as a broken heart. Now we all know, we toss around very easily the word, I'm heartbroken, or, this is devastating. And often, we think about the things that we think are heartbreaking and devastating. Sometimes they unfortunately really, really are. Sometimes it's more of just, it's some kind of syntax that we use or whatever it is. But what I want to say is that if we think about that line, think about it. It is such a profound line. Nothing as whole as a broken heart. What does that mean? We think back what we said before, that, life breaks us, but we are stronger in the broken pieces, in the broken places. That is really, a broken heart is something that we carry it within us, and the pieces mend, but we are left with the strength that we had from when we dealt with this broken heart. I have to tell you that many, many years later, after I grew up, and I only then did it start to dawn upon me what I really lived through. It was great to be a child, and with every stage of life, like we all know, different things happen in life. And as we grow, we see things through different lenses. Some things become much less important. Some things become much more important and carry much more weight, because we suddenly start to realize how strong or how meaningful they really are. So I want to share with you that after I was, thank God, I was married, I had children, and it started to dawn upon me more and more and more that how did I survived because I was a child and because I had a lot of support. How did my father survive this? How was he able to deal with losing his wife, who was 37 years old, left with 5 children, had to take care of a home, a business, life, and everything else? So one day I decided I was going to ask him. Called him up and I said, I want to ask you something. I want to come and speak with you about something. And he said, sure, come. Came over to his house, and over 2 cups of tea, we sat there. And I said, I want to ask you something. I don't want to cause you pain or sorrow, but I want to ask you, now that I am a wife, and now that I'm a mother, I cannot stop thinking about what you lost. How did you survive? Not only you survived, you thrived. You made us feel that we were amazing. We never felt different. We had such a happy life. And he said, well, I'll tell you, I don't really know the answer to that other than lots of people helped me and God really helped me. But I will share something with you that I really never told anybody before. And he said to me that after my mother passed away, he decided that he would not really go in the morning to shul, to the synagogue, to daven Shacharis, the morning prayer, because my grandmother had been living with us. She was an amazing woman. She was 70 years old when she lost her only daughter, and she took care of us as if unbelievable. But he did not want her to have this burden of having to worry about us getting off to school by herself. So he decided he was going to daven in the house, so he would be there when we went to school. And every so often, I still hear it in my mind, she saying to him, go to shul, it's okay, it's okay. And a few times he would go just because she wanted him to go. And he said one morning he went to shul, and he was sitting there, he was praying, and he felt that somebody was just looking at him the whole time. And he realized that there was an older gentleman, an older Lubavitcher Hasid, who was sitting next to him and was looking at him the whole time while he was praying. And he said he was very uncomfortable. And finally, when he finished, he took off his tefillin, his talit, he wrapped it up, put them in his bag, and he just sat down for a moment to say the few chapters of Psalms that we say after prayers every morning. And then he got up to go home, and this gentleman, this elderly man, says to him, I know you're probably in a rush, but if I could ask you please to sit here for 3 minutes, I want to just tell you something. And my father said, honestly, I was in a rush, but out of respect to this older gentleman, I figured, okay, 3 more minutes won't matter. And I sat back down, and this is what this man said to me. He said to me, Rabbi, I know what happened to you, and I want to tell you something. Please don't be offended. I'm sharing this with you because something similar that happened to you happened to me, and nobody told me this. I wish somebody would have told me this when I was going through this. And then my father said, this is what he said to me. He said, right now you have 2 choices in your life. Whichever choice you make, nobody will fault you. Everybody will understand that you are somebody that had been dealt very difficult hand, and whatever choice you make is fine. First choice is the easier choice, even though none of them are easy because your life is no longer easy. The first choice is, he said, you know, you can fall apart and really do the bare minimum. And you know what? Don't worry. God will take care of your family, and they will survive, and they will grow up, and everything will be okay. But they won't have that happy, steady feeling. Or you could do something that's much more difficult. You can pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and you can work very hard, and it's going to be very, very difficult, but you can make it a real focused life that every day you wake up and you think, today, as hard as it is, I am going to give my children, my family, the best, happiest, most successful day that I can give them. And then he said to my father, I just want to wish you everything good. I hope it's okay that I told you this. Please forgive me. My father said he thanked him and he came home. Then he looked me in the eye and he said to me, I hope you know which choice I made. And I have to tell you that till today, I think about that, and it's very obvious which choice he made. He didn't have to tell us that he was making a choice. It was in who he was. He wanted us to live happily. I remember my grandmother saying to us, you know, you can be those pitiful children that everybody will have rahmanas on. Everybody will want to have pity on you. But do not be those children, because nobody wants to be around a sad, depressed soul. People want to be around happy people. The happier you are, the more successful you will be. And it's nobody's fault. This is something God gave us. We have to learn how to live with it. Of course, like I said earlier, you don't realize, you don't understand these lessons until you grow up. But if you're taught these lessons, no matter at which stage of life, you start to realize something very shocking. I actually started to realize that from this sadness, from this tragedy that we lived through, we actually learned that we could be happy, that we could have real joy. And this is really the message that I think is important for all of us to live with. We're all living in crazy times now, unprecedented times. People have anguish from many different areas in their lives. There is a lot of sorrow, but we also have to be able to look even in the darkness and find that there is not always, there is a lot of sorrow, but in the cracks, there is a lot of light. We just have to glimpse it. As a friend of mine who is going through some very, very terrible, terrible personal tragedy said to me, she said, I heard such a good line, and this is what keeps me going. She said, we always said, there is light at the end of the tunnel. She said, I modified that. I say to myself every morning when I wake up, I am the light in the tunnel. I can't wait for the end of the tunnel. I have to be the light. I have to be the joy. I have to be the goodness, the kindness. And I think that no matter what's happening in our lives, and I truly hope and pray that our lives are the best, that every person who's listening to this now is only blessed with goodness and kindness, that's a tremendous blessing. And it's even a bigger blessing if we take that goodness and joy and share it with somebody else. So thank you for giving me the ability to share my little piece of history with you. I hope that it resonates and it goes further. And it's really a great pleasure and honor. And I want to just give a big shout out here. I don't usually have this opportunity to Rabbi and Rabbi Sollish. I'm sure your community knows how lucky you are to have them. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to join you this evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that incredible talk and sharing your story with us. I can just speak for myself. Very moving, very touching, and very powerful. Are you open to, if some folks have questions, a little bit of a Q&A for a minute or two?
Sure.
Okay. Anybody have any questions, thoughts they wanted to share or ask? Bethany, go ahead. Bethany, you gotta unmute yourself.
Okay. Hi, thank you so much. I've never heard that before, that I am the light. And I will keep this in my heart. to remember that there, even my mom's 97, and I was late coming on because she called me, and she wanted to make sure that that somebody had my phone number, so if anything happened to her, she could call me. And there is light in the darkness, you know. And when you were telling your story, I thought, you know, this sounds like something my mom would say to me, you know, to be the light, and my dad also, to be the light, to help people, that my life has been wonderful, and so is hers, and to remember the loving part of every situation that will change, you know. And when you said that there's cracks of light, and it's like all along the way in the path of darkness. So I thank you so much. It was just what I needed to hear tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? A thought, a comment, a question? If not, I'm going to ask a question. That's not a threat, by the way. I have a question anyway. My question is related to Rosh Chodesh Society, because I'm looking forward to next year. Has the topic been released yet for next year's studies?
Yes, it has, and very appropriate that you're asking tonight, because the name of the topic for next year is Code to Joy, the world's happiest kept secret.
Look at that. That's amazing. So it's all about happiness.
All about happiness.
Wow. Amazing.
We figured we need that in this world right now.
By the way, for anybody listening, for all those listening, you might have thought that was a setup, because it literally sounded like a setup. That was not a setup. That was totally an innocent question. I actually didn't know. If an email went out, I may have missed the email, but it's been hectic. But I just amazing. So happiness, I think that's a topic that we all need. I think the only challenge we have right now is waiting until the next season of RCS, but we'll have plenty of opportunities to get together and to study and to be inspired and to inspire each other. Mr. Jacobson, I want to thank you again. It's great to see you. I thank you for tonight, for sharing your story and the powerful lessons. Thank you for all that you do in literally bringing Torah and Torah inspiration into our community and into our lives and into our homes. It makes a big difference in our lives and in the lives of our community. And we're very grateful for everything that you do. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Couldn't do it without you.
It's a partnership.
Absolutely.
All right. Wishing you happiness and nachas and success and joy, and wishing all of you the same as well. That was some thunder and lightning. Atlanta is storming. Don't worry, those clouds, there's a silver lining. There's light in the cracks. Thank you for joining me tonight. Thank you, Mrs. Jacobson. Thank you all. We'll see you very soon. Don't forget, this week we have the Yiddish course. We have Judaism and astrology and lots of wonderful events. So take a look at the website and join us for all of these incredible learning opportunities. Let's join together as community, as friends, as extended family, and let's keep the inspiration going. Have a good night, everyone. Stay safe. Be well. Bye. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well,
Good night, Rev Ari.
Bye. Good night.